All right. Loving the backdrop. Got to get into it. It's awesome.
Lots of fun stuff there, bro.
Yep.
So stuff you and I love.
Mm-hmm.
Guns, hot women, tanks,
Fighter
jet
jets.
aircraft, Gundam, and apparently a Claymore.
That's right. Yep. Brought into popularity by The Edge of Tomorrow. Pretty good movie, actually.
Yeah.
I didn't like
I
the
can't
ending.
rewatch it all the time now.
That's the problem. Then the ending,
watch it once,
they
I'm
messed up
good.
the ending. They should have just let him die at the end. Okay? Just let him die. Because that would have been good. He would have been the martyr that saved the world, all that good
It's
stuff.
okay if
fine.
people die at the end.
It's okay if people die. Sometimes the hero doesn't make it. It happens. But anyway.
That's kind of an interesting intro you just provided us, because this is a motorcycle safety video,
right.
and we want you to make it. Mm-hmm. We want the hero to survive. That would be you, Mr. TNP Motorcycle Rider. We're here in the bunker to have Sean discuss a pretty serious motorcycle incident that he was involved with. And Sean, take it away.
All right. Well, let's see. Should I give away the punchline or start with the beginning?
Build up.
Okay.
But don't make it too long. I mean, they're not going to watch. They're going to quit watching.
Right,
Just give them the Reader's Digest version.
Are you guys still watching? Oh my gosh.
I doubt it.
Like
It's probably
5
just you
minutes
and
into
I.
This thing? All right. So it all started out. I had a buddy that was coming out for a ride in Utah. He's not from here. Jumps on a rented bike, big Victory Cruiser, and we were supposed to hook up. There was supposed to be 3 of us on the ride. One guy couldn't make it. He got sick the day before, didn't make it out. So everything's going well, riding all day, day 1 of 3. And then we got into open cattle country right at dusk. And we were making some videos, some pictures, and I put him out in front for the first time that day.
Because you want to get him on camera,
videos.
right?
Yeah, so I could get the good videos with the backdrop and everything. It was beautiful, and we got some really good shots. But then as it got darker and I just wrapped up taking up pictures and everything, a little black cow stepped out in the road right in front of him, and he was cruise control set at 65, just cruising down the road. I don't think he really even saw it. There was no braking, and he just ran headlong right into this cow that walked out in the road in front of him. So, badly injured, ended up being life flighted.
Hold on, back up. So he hit the cow. What happened to you?
So I was just behind him, and he got dumped off of his bike right in front of mine. So I bounced off his leg, and it sent my bike airborne, and so I ended up bailing. And
you came off your bike too at the same speed, more or less.
More or less. I had a little bit of time
Scrubbed
to
off.
brake because I was a couple car lengths behind him, so I scrubbed off maybe 15 or 20.
Okay.
But then so we ended up with bikes and
Parts
people,
everywhere.
Parts.
What happened to the cow?
The cow got carried by his bike actually for just a few feet before everything fell over, and ended up just laying dead on the road right where it sat.
So it died.
It was gone. Yeah,
Okay.
I think on impact. So that was the gist of what happened. So pretty major wreck. Ended up calling, barely was able to get enough cell phone signal because we're in the middle of nowhere, and was able to get emergency responders who just very fortunately happened to be in the area. That was kind of miracle number 1. Also, the life flight helicopter, which is normally about 40 minutes away, happened to be within 10 minutes of the crash site. And then he was able to get on board, and they took him down to the hospital. 2 weeks in the ICU, 2 more weeks in recovery before being driven back to his home state in a van. And then it was months and months of physical therapy and recovery after that. 38 broken bones. But another miracle, no internal organ damage, no spine damage, and no brain damage. So
you thought he was dead when you first came up on him, right?
Yeah, I thought for
Sean
sure.
told me, he's like, dude, when I came up on, I didn't know if he was alive or not.
Yeah, I mean, his front of his helmet was filled with blood, and his body was mangled up. His leg was like folded up into his armpit. I mean, he was a mangled mess.
Yeah.
Not a lot of blood, but just I was worried that he had a punctured lung or that his organs were scrambled or something. So, but it all worked out in the end. So very, very fortunate, miracle on miracle, and so that's the gist of what happened. But I think the focus of this video is going to be a little bit more about how to avoid or prepare for such an incident.
Yeah, so we've talked very briefly about it and some other videos, but this is going to be the formal debrief. We promised to make this video, and this is it. So lessons learned. Sean, we just sat down and stuff you and I have discussed before, and just some points. Our purpose in doing this is passing it on to you, TNP motorcyclist, so you're safe. So you can be better prepared for something like this. So here we go. Lessons learned from the Sean and what was his first name?
Eric
cow crash. And by the way, he and I went down and saw Eric in St. George Hospital. We rode down on our motorcycles to do so. That was going to be a video, but all that video footage was lost due to an SD card crashing, pretty standard.
Yeah.
And I didn't have it backed up, so no one would have watched it anyhow, but they wouldn't have. But we'll tell you, it was hard seeing him in the hospital. He was pretty cracked up, although really nice guy, and he was on the heel at that point.
Yep, he was getting better.
Okay, first lesson. Experience and who's lead. Go, Sean.
Yeah, so we've talked about this a bunch, and we talk about safety a lot, actually. It's kind of funny. I didn't realize until we really started talking about how much we talk about it. But, yeah, it's a big topic. I think fun and safety are the two big things with motorcycles. By experience level, when you're on a multi-person ride, you definitely want to have the more experienced person in the front and leading out. Now, that was something that we were sticking to for most of the day, like I said, but we switched it up at that time of day because of the beautiful sunset, because we were out in the desert, open road, no cars. And I was thinking, okay, let's get some good shots while we can. And that lasted about 5 minutes too long. And so as it got darker, like once I got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm putting everything away, I should have immediately taken the lead back again, because the conditions were actually getting worse than they had been throughout the day. It's a dark road, and we know we're in cattle country. So experience should be leading out as much as possible, whenever possible.
And throw in there recency of experience, because this guy had not ridden a lot. He is actually quite the novice. And it's kind of like when you snow ski, if you guys are snow skiers, if you ski with someone who is a novice, you kind of have to ski to their level, or you ski your own game and say, hey, I'll see you at the bottom.
Right.
But you can't expect Mr. Novice to stay with you skiing. You're hitting the moguls, catching air, doing helicopters and back scratchers, and you think you're going to see him behind you.
Yeah.
You're not going to see you, Mr. New Guy he's going to be on a Hayabusa staying up with you. You can't expect that. Would you think you have to kind of come down to his level?
Yeah, you got to come down. So whoever, it's kind of the weakest link in the chain thing, right? So whoever is the weakest rider that wants to go the slowest, that ends up being who sets the pace. And so, and that's something that as a more experienced rider, it might be, a little bit of a mindset shift. And we had been doing that throughout the day. But I think that in this particular experience, he doesn't even own a motorcycle, and so
that's a red flag right there.
Yeah, he's rented. He has his own helmet. He had, a little bit of safety gear.
That shows you how much he doesn't ride, though.
Yeah, and so that's the thing. I think his total seat hours over the last few years is probably in the neighborhood of 30 or less. And so when you got 30 hours of seat time or less, and you're jumping on a really big, heavy rented motorcycle, it's your first day riding it,
you're out of your element.
There's a lot of issues. I mean, you're basically just in the crawling phase of figuring out how to ride this thing. So that was a big issue, I think, on this particular incident.
During the rides, you and I have discussed this, and watch our motorcycle content. I think it's actually pretty good. I like watching it. After we edit it together, and there's a lot of interesting stuff said, not just about motorcycles. We rant about politics and women and family stuff and basically everything, Hollywood movies, cars. we go everywhere.
All over.
But we do say, I'm very particular who I ride with. I ride with Sean all the time. Sean's an excellent motorcyclist. I never have to worry about him at all. He's being humble. He's really good. And I never have to worry about Sean at all. I don't ride with people who aren't. So if you chose to, and and that is A-okay because you wanted to have that bonding experience as friends. But like you're saying right now, and we're telling you right now, when you do that, you're not driving the way you normally drive.
Right.
You are going down to the lowest common denominator and realize that guy does not have recency of experience. He's on a bike he's not familiar with, and he's out of his element. And that in itself raises his risk level to the probably orange, medium to high. Even when he throws a leg over there, he's high risk.
Yeah, I mean,
he's not a normal dude.
He's walking out onto this thing at a 4.4 already.
That's correct.
So
that's correct. And let me ask you this though: did you realize that when you first started?
Oh yeah.
Did you realize and say, like when you first started riding with him the day prior, you go, "This guy's at high risk." Did you think that?
It was that morning. Yeah, the morning of.
When you saw how he's driving, you're like, "Oh crap, he is not comfortable."
Well, and I knew he wouldn't be because I knew that his experience level was really low, and I knew that the bike he was getting on, it's a relatively advanced
That's our next
bike.
point. Cruiser choice. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the bike that he rented was a large. I want to say it was like a.
Doesn't matter. It's a big cruiser.
It's huge. It was heavy, big, does not turn well, does not brake well. It was comfortable for a long distance cruise, which we were doing. But I'm watching him, and we rented it in a relatively busy part of town. And so he jumps on this thing, and he's trying to merge into traffic and everything. And he's taking it slow. To his credit, he's doing the steps the way he's supposed to, but it was pretty obvious that he wasn't going to be real comfortable on this thing. Did
you have any input on what motorcycle he rented, and knowing what you know now, would you have influenced his decision?
I didn't have any input. He rented it.
Okay, take part B.
Before we talked.
Let's say you do this all over again with a different dude. Would you kind of guide his rental selection?
Yeah.
Would you say stay away from a 500-pound, 700-pound cruiser?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
For sure. Yeah, especially at that level. I would say, honestly, the FJR, man. I keep going back to it. I know. I'm totally.
He's an FJR convert
on it. But here's the thing about the FJR
here. Keep talking.
But the thing about the FJR is that, I had taken a big hiatus from riding. And so when I got back into it, the first one I jumped on was Nutton's FJR. And it immediately sold me because it was the kind of bike that you can get on and be comfortable very quickly. It's nimble. It doesn't feel heavy. It's light on its feet. Plenty of power and great stopping.
Yep.
And it's the kind of bike that it inspires confidence right out of the gate. I
agree.
think even if I had jumped on that thing,
I know where my little FTR is. It's gone.
Yeah. I think even if I had jumped on that big cruiser, it'd take me a while. It'd take probably a good couple hours of maneuvering it around and getting used to it before I'd really feel comfortable on it. So
let's throw this in. I think this is an appropriate point. We're going to hit it later, but we'll hit it now. Whatever bike you're on, whether you're on your FGR, your cruiser bike, your dirt bike, your dual sport, your super sport, emergency braking practice. So usually Sean and I, per ride, we'll get going. I don't know, we've done it all the way up to 75, and we're on interphone with each other. I said, hey, dude, I'm going to do an EV practice. He's like, right on. He's always offset, and so we slam on it, and we stop, really using the anti-lock feature of our bikes, which I do advocate. I think most of your bikes should have anti-lock on it, if not all, and I'm not sure if his did, but it is a safety feature. But practice emergency braking frequently. And when I say emergency braking, I mean you are literally stopping that bike as soon as you possibly can. Per ride, test your brakes and test yourself.
And if you have a marker that's on the side of the road, I've used this a couple of times, is look for a marker and then say, okay, I'm going to brake as late as I can and stop before I get to that marker.
Right.
See if you can do it. And if you're braking too late, then that's a signal to you that your bike doesn't stop as well as you think it does. So
now I would love to overlay video, GoPro video of our helmet cameras, of which we have probably hundreds of hours at this point, but I don't know if I'll be able to find an EB exercise. I'm not going to go searching. At any rate, you will see overlay video of Sean and I riding, and he and I have done some riding. I mean, a lot. He and I have been on, I can't even keep track how many motorcycle adventures at this point. Technical riding. Would you call it technical? Road technical?
For sure.
California, Wyoming, Oregon, lots in Utah, and Nevada. Wet, snow. Yeah, even snow. Not like when it's pouring snow, but we have to dodge it in the road. Okay, moving on. So we talked about emergency braking. Cruiser probably wasn't the best choice for his experience level.
Yeah.
How about lighting?
Lighting, huge problem in this particular example, because the rented bike had a terrible headlight. He had his high beam on, but it was not nearly as good as the low beam that I got on the factory FJR. So And we actually talked about that on interviewing right before the crash because it was getting dark, and we said, hey, it's like, dude, let me see your headlight. Is that high beam? Yep, it is. Oh, let me pull it next to you and see how it goes, compared to mine. I mean, it wasn't even close. And so that was an issue. I have actually since added an aftermarket light onto my FJR because I recognize now how much that actually makes a difference, because the further out you can get your lighting, the more time you have to brake. And even if it's just an extra 10 miles an hour that you can scrub off, that's going to help to keep you from getting injured or killed. So
only if there's someone who had modeled adding additional lighting onto their vehicle. Only if there's someone who had, I don't know, put like a Baja Designs on most of their motorcycles,
right.
And that you would have ridden with that individual for years.
Yeah.
Dang, I wish that would have happened.
Which, again, with a rented bike, you can't do that, which is another problem.
Well, let's go back to point one. All the more reason you're in the lead.
Put the guy in the lead. That's true.
The best lighting, hopefully lead has the best lighting, but the best lighting needs to be up front. Remember when we rode against Feather River? And that night, we're in Northern California, we're on the Feather River, it's at night. And you saw the Baja Designs come into play then. I have one on my FGR. It's on the right side. I was going to put two, but I can't really put two because it blinds oncoming motorists. I put one that's adequate, but did that help that night? As we're going through a pitch black, windy road.
Yep. And I still am impressed with the way that you should have seen him riding this road. It was relatively windy. We're scooting along pretty good, and the switch is not up on his controls. It's down on the side. And he's like one hand in this thing. He's riding, hitting the switch. So
with
that was
oncoming
impressive.
traffic.
That was impressive.
Thank you.
That was really good.
But lighting is huge. I'm so happy you put it on your FGR. It is a safety thing, and I've talked about it over and over again. I will say that new motorcycles, I would say probably from 2020 on, a lot of the lighting is much better. On my 890, it's LED lighting. It's really good. But if you have halogen lighting, you probably need to put on something else. And especially if you do what we do and you go where there are animals and you have an animal threat and the threat of road surface, that's going to be its own talking point. Yeah. But you should really have excellent lighting along with that. Yeah. Which is huge.
Yeah. The animal threats and we talk about that all the time. It's hilarious. I mean, everybody talks
Let's do it now.
All right. So we talk about it all the time. Like, everybody thinks, for whatever reason, the novice riders, every time I talk to them, will say, oh, I don't want to go on the freeway because it's too fast. And I'm like, dude, the freeway is the safest place.
That's one of your least threat situations.
That is the safest place because it's not the speed. It's the fact that you have the same speed as the cars around you. Everybody's going the same direction, same speed, no side streets.
And it's generally a sanitized roadway where you will not have, well, I shouldn't say always, but you can have freeway areas where animals will come out on, but it's fairly rare on most of them. Yeah. They have concrete barricades that prevent it. Yeah. When they design a freeway, they don't want deer and elk and raccoons crossing all the time, so they put barriers up. Yep. It does happen, but I'm saying, like he's saying, it's generally much better.
It is.
Back to animals.
And so the problems that we've had have not been primarily with cars or with speed. It's more with animals. Deer incident, turkey incident, another deer incident, cow incident.
Yeah. We've been together with high animal threats.
Yeah, just animals are the biggest thing, man. They come bailing right out of the bushes. You don't see them coming.
Super quick, if you don't know what the deer incident is, I have talked about it. I did have a video out on it years ago. Riding with my friend Shane up in Hood River, Oregon. I'm on a KTM 500 EXC dual sport. We just came off a single track through heavily forested. Then we go on a 2-lane, well-paved road. It's about 10:30 in the morning. Shane is up front. I'm in the back. The 500 EXC does not have anti-skid on it. And so Shane, and I have this on GoPro, so Shane sees a buck deer bound out right in front of him. He takes it full force. He locks up. Very excellent motorcyclist, Shane is. But he was able to take off about 15 miles an hour before he hit it. Goes ass over tea kettle. And then I locked it up and ended up laying it down because I thought I was going to run over Shane, even though I was offset. Long story short, I high side into the ditch. I land on my shoulder. I have full protection, of which we'll talk about. But I tore my rotator cuff. I needed surgery, but my protective gear helped me a lot. The second incident is we're on the FJRs, and Sean and I are above Lassen Volcanic National Park. This is its own ride. We'll narrate that. It's going to be a fun experience. And in the shade, we had a flock of turkeys. I'm in the lead. A freaking flock of turkeys was right there, and I drove right up on it, and a hen smashed right into the front of my FJR and busted the whole front piece. There's about $1,000 worth of damage, true or false.
Oh, yeah.
That's on a DVR footage, but it's not very good because I have a DVR on most of my road bikes. And the third one is I was on the 890, KTM 890, and we're driving over by Mount Nebo in California, and I had yet another freaking deer almost hit me. Came off the road, and it was the third incident, so probably happens in threes, just like you hear.
Right, yep.
The point being is that these animals are highly unpredictable. I don't fault you at all, by the way, for what happened. I mean, you saw open range signs, there's cow in the area, but I mean, how often do you see them just stroll across the road? That's a pretty rare incident. As motorcyclists, it's not like driving a car. You have to be kind of clairvoyant and say, really foresee and have a crystal ball. What are my threats today? And really distinctly break apart, what are my animal threats?
Yeah. Well, and by nature and hindsight, I am the type of person that will look back and say, oh, it was definitely preventable.
He said that you should have heard him when I phone called him. He was like all guilty.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, it's not your fault.
But, I mean, it's ultimately, the safest thing you can do is never leave the garage, right? And so if you're going to go ride, there's going to be risk. And, things can happen. What we're talking about here is trying to mitigate and minimize that risk as much as possible. So,
how about onto gear now?
Gear. Okay.
How was his gear when he came off? He hit that thing without scrubbing off any speed, apparently, because of experience level type of motorcycle. So he hits this huge cow or small cow, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it's a chunk of meat, and it stopped him cold, and he flew off. How was his gear?
So,
rate it from 0 to 5. 5 is outstanding. 0 is crap. Give me a rating right off the bat, altogether.
2. Yeah, 2. So, he flew in, so he's somewhat limited on the gear that he could bring anyway. That being said, I've done a decent amount of flying with motorcycle stuff, and I feel like I'm always better kitted up. But it was a vest that had a pad in the back and a couple small pads in the front, and then gloves, helmet, steel-toed boots. That was basically it, and jeans. And so he actually had a surprisingly small amount of road rash, probably because he stopped so hard when he hit the cow. And he had mostly trauma, that broken bones and, things like that.
Let me ask you this, and I'm going to make a point to the viewer. You guys may go to Cycle Gear, you may pick up some stuff, you may get this riding jack, and you look at, I'm all protected. You ain't protected. The foam in that stuff is total shit. You have to upgrade it with D3O. Okay, what I'm wearing here is a Klim Latitude. It has D3O elbows, it has D3O shoulders, it has double Cordura overlays on it. It has cinches right here. Do you know what these are for? These are for sliding. So the sleeve doesn't ride up and take all your skin off. These are supposed to be tight. So when you ride, you should cinch this up, cinch that up. So when you go sliding, that sleeve stays in position and all this armor does its job. And I wear like an inflatable vest, a hit air vest or something like it. I have shoulder protection here. Chest protection and a D3O backup. How about you?
And
this is a Kilimanjaro.
This is a Kilimanjaro, yeah, actually gifted. And
I wanted to have good stuff. This was shit.
Yeah. So, yeah, this thing is great. It's got insulation that's removable. It's got ventilation, zips. It's got the cinches that he was talking about. Let's see, this side's probably...
Look at the overlay of Cordura. So high wear, going down the road. D3O here, protective.
Yep, and it's got reflective strips. It's got a lot of good stuff. And
liner
it's
that you can zip out when it gets warmer.
Zip out liner, pocket in the back, D3O back protector. This is a great jacket. It's been great. And actually, I was wearing this during the crash. And so I actually did. I think you can see a little scuffing.
Not much though at all.
Yeah.
That's surprising. It's not more worn.
Yeah. When I went down, actually, I slid on the left side of my body, and there's a little bit of scuffing, but it really held up well.
So glad you had that on.
I was surprised, yeah.
Gear.
Motorcycle pants. It's another big thing. Jeans, I can tell you from experience, are terrible at preventing road rash. Doesn't work at all. Don't think the jeans are going to do it. They do have some special riding jeans I've seen now that they're making.
A little bit better, not much.
Yeah.
A little bit better. Some have pads in them, and that'll help, but they're nothing like dedicated leather or Klim riding pants.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of times the hip protection, that's important to have, the knee protection. His steel-toe boots, I don't know if they actually did more harm than good. When he crashed, something caught his foot, I guess, and it rolled over and broke all the metatarsals across his right foot and actually crushed it so bad they were worried it wasn't going to get any circulation and they were going to have to amputate. Luckily, it came back while he was in the ICU. The circulation came back and they were able to save it. And, last report is that he's actually on the mend and the bones are starting to come back together. But this is, what are we now? 2 years out.
My choice of boots now, I've gone away from those vinyl boots that I rode from 2013 on. I probably got 5 years out. And then last suspect and my son had a very significant crash that we've debriefed before, and his leg got completely jacked up. He still has titanium screws in his leg. One of the reasons is I think his foot gear was so crappy. So I ride with, these Formas. I'm so glad I have this. This is it. It's a Forma Adventure Low. I bought them at Revzilla. And so I'm going to do a dedicated review. So these are not steel-toed, but they're stiff leather boots with a stiff sole. I think that's probably the best you can do. Yeah. And you just want to give some type of a structure to your ankle mechanism. How about helmet?
Helmets.
Real quick.
Yeah, real quick. So this is my helmet of choice for the moment. It's a Sedici Strata 2, I believe.
How about his helmet? What was it?
His helmet was, I had never heard of him before. It was...
some generic one?
Generic.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like one of these $120 helmets.
Well,
so
just in your no helmet states like Utah, I do see, and when it warms up, a lot of dudes riding without helmets, and I think they're complete morons. These are the same guys that will wear a T-shirt, flip-flops, and we've had family friends of ours die because they were dressed that way. One was on a Kawasaki 400 back in like 80, I want to say like 81. He got killed. So that drove home to me the idea of dress for the crash, not the ride.
Yeah.
So we won't go and review helmets, but
no, but I'll tell you,
full face, not half.
Yeah. Full
face helmet, good protection, and an answer rating, if that's what it's called on the back.
And what you'd like to have too is if you can get
DOT
those
rating,
removable cheek pads, so that when they pull your helmet off, it doesn't hurt your neck. So you can rip those out. His helmet did have that. And his helmet 100% saved his life. 100%. If I can get the picture, maybe I'll get it over and you can overlay it. It's his helmet was jacked up and it did protect him. He still, through a full face helmet, broke his cheekbones and had to have little surgeries to fix that back up.
Goodness gracious.
And broke his nose. That's where all the blood was coming from. I thought he was coughing it up, but it actually was coming from his nose. So very fortunate. But yeah, I mean, without that helmet, guaranteed he wouldn't have made it.
Dress for the crash. Good jacket. I think leather's the best. As long as I can take it with a weather, I'll run leather both top and bottom with great pads in it. My Alpine Stars suit that you see me run a lot, it's really excellent. Next best would be this really thick, high-quality Cordura with ample padding on it, both pants and top, good helmet. Well, now, when I first started motorcycling, I wore the toilet seat, around. I don't do that anymore because that's too uncomfortable. But good gloves. I'm running Reacts, Casters a lot. We rode today, by the way. We just got back from a ride. And good boots. We'll leave it at that. Look to me to review, my riding gear. I have a lot of requests. Well, not a lot, but some requests from donors. Can
I add to the hit air thing, too, that they're getting pretty fancy with that? If you got the money for it, which I don't want to spend that much, but they are now integrating the hit air vest into leather motorcycle wear.
Yeah, inflatable.
That's amazing.
I think I saw Alpine Stars have one of those.
Yeah, I think they're getting a lot of race influence from the tracks, figuring out what works really well. So, I mean, a lot of good gear out there, guys. Just don't chintz on it.
Here's one thing I don't like about that, though. It's built into a specific overgarment, and so when it's 100 degrees and it's too hot for leather, you leave behind that hit air. So I run a vest.
Yeah.
So that can go with me no matter what. If it's hot, I'm wearing a mesh, I can go with the Climb. Or leather, I will run it.
Versatility.
Yes, sir. Okay, number 5. You're out in the middle of nowhere. You did tell the viewers that it was hard to get a cell signal. Would you consider an SOS beacon as part of your emergency loadout in the future?
Yep, I think so. It's one thing when you're doing rides around in relatively civilized areas, or at least nearby, where you've always got signal coverage. But when we were out there in the middle of nowhere, and I hadn't thought of this ahead of time, But when it came time for me to actually call for emergency services to come and help us out, the cell phone signal was almost non-existent, and I had to kind of run around back and forth on the road for a little while trying to get a signal, and finally the call was able to go through. And I think that's because of the ability to boost that your cell phone, some cell phones will do. They'll like send extra power through the antenna to try and grab a signal in an emergency phone call situation. Another thing that I found out that they do is they actually send your GPS coordinates to the 911 operator when they pick up.
That's
and
cool.
So that was really awesome. But having an SOS beacon that is satellite capable, so that if you are completely out of cell phone coverage, it's probably a good idea.
Here's one of mine. I literally just went back to my motorcycle bin that's not too far away, and this is stuff I put in at least when I go off-road. I won't say I have this on the road all the time, but if I go into a place I know that's going to have SCOSH, cell phone signal, all this stuff is getting put in. Here's a Rescue Link PLB, Personal Locator Beacon 395. This doesn't require an annual fee. All you do is register it with NOAA, your information, and you re-update that registration information every year. So this is contained in like a little neoprene pouch like this. And also I've integrated an Orion flare pistol. Now, I don't know if you needed all that, but where you and I have gone off-road and we're distant, it might be helpful. And then here's an Olight baton, and it has the cone on it with extra batteries, because Murphy's Law means that the batteries will die. Would that be helpful to have the emergency people find you quicker?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Can you imagine firing that up? You see the helicopter 10 miles away, so you can see where you are.
Oh, yeah. Maybe a flare pin, too, if you wanted to go smaller, lighter.
Yeah, they're harder to find.
Yeah.
They're around, but they're hard to find. This one has, I want to say this shoots up like 400 feet. Forget what it was, but it's lightweight. Orion flare pistol.
Yep.
And then, didn't you say you're using your Olight, though?
I did, yeah. So I had an Olight on me. It was the Baton 1, S1. And when the emergency responders started coming down the road, I had two thoughts in mind. First was, oh gosh, please don't let somebody come and run us over, because, we had just gotten into a crash in low light conditions, and I was worried that a car would come and get us. And so that was the first concern. And then secondarily, when the first responders were coming, I wanted to make sure that they could locate us easily. And so I took my S1 out and turned on the strobe and made sure I set it, near us, so that anybody coming by would see us. So.
He also carries LED pucks in his kit. I don't know if you had them then, but you do now, right?
Yeah, that's a new addition.
It's an LED road puck. They're all multi-directional.
You can get them.
If you have room in your system, I say by all means
100%.
carry it.
At least one. I mean, they're magnetic. They've got a hook on them. They've got, like I said, unidirectional. They flash everywhere, and multiple strobe patterns and so forth. Use lithium batteries when you buy them, because the...
oh, you mean kind of like these?
Yeah.
Lithium. So these are my spare batteries. These are CR123 lithiums in a holder.
Yeah.
So they don't discharge, and they'll fit better in that.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yep. The pucks that I got are AAAs, and the AAA lithiums are expensive, but it's worth it when you're putting it into an emergency kit, because they last significantly longer and they don't leak.
And they do better in cold weather.
Yeah. And
the alkaline really die in cold weather.
Yep.
So he said that they forwarded the GPS coordinates via phone. You should know how to know your GPS coordinates from your phone system if you don't have a handheld unit. And so anytime there's an emergency, and I brief these guys about it, whether we're shooting out in the desert and maybe there's an accident out there, we're motorcycling, I say, hey, you got to know what your GPS coordinates are. Screenshot it, and then when you're on the phone with them, say, hey, I'm at north such and such, west such and such. They may have it through the 911 system, but maybe they don't.
Yeah, depending on the system and how old it is.
Yeah. We talked about single responder. How about medically? Did you have a first aid kit, and would it made a difference?
So I had a level 1 first aid kit with me that day, and he really, like I said, there was very little road rash and not a lot of bleeding. So it wasn't something that even I think a level 2 wouldn't have been able to do very much in this particular situation. If he had a compound fracture that was bleeding significantly or something like that, a tourniquet would have been huge. That would be a good idea to bring along, I think. But you definitely want to have a first aid kit with you of some kind. And
See if I have one in my gear stuff. So what I run with, guys, is a level 2+ in all my bikes. And so do I have a tourniquet in those? I don't know if I have a tourniquet in each one, but I have gauze. I'm not going to go in and review it now. We don't have the time. But I do level 1+. And honestly, that's about all I can take on the bike. I'm not going to do a level 3, a level 4 paramedic level kit. Nobody's going to do that. It's too much.
It's too big.
I just remember, the further you get away from cell signal, the more you get remote, the more preparations you should have. If you don't, you're not preparing smartly. Because bikes can break down. They do. You can get a flat. You may be walking out, and there could be someone seriously hurt, and it may be up to you to save that dude to life. Because the golden hour is the golden hour, and if they can't get to them within 60 minutes, that guy may die because you don't have preparations.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, we talked about emergency braking and then foreseeing hazards. And by this, we're not just talking animals. What other hazards have you and I seen?
We've seen a lot of road hazards. You've got some of the roads we've been on have had rock slides on them.
Yeah,
They've had
California's famous for that.
Yeah, and dirt. What do you call
Scree.
it? Like a scree. Yeah.
Scree just dusting across the road. You come around a corner in a lean, and then you've got dusted rock particles.
All over the road. And then a bunch of, we've been through some pretty decent amounts of like slush and snow. We tend to ride all year round. And so in the early spring, you get up there and you get up into the mountains on some of those roads that are fairly freshly opened.
And in shadow.
And in shadow, and it doesn't melt the way the rest of the roads do. So it's great until you get up into the mountains. And then you run into that stuff. You've got...
Were you with me on that ride? I was next to the Feather River up in Northern California on the FJR, and I hit a freaking osprey with my helmet. He came off out of the river. I don't think you were with me on that ride. Speaking of wildlife.
Yeah.
And I saw this big bird. I'm driving. I'm in a full lean. This big bird had a trout in his talons, and he's trying to get airborne, and he couldn't do it. He releases the fish, and he freaking hit the top of my helmet and glanced off, and it was an osprey, a fishing eagle. And it stunk like fish. Did I ever tell you that?
No.
I think it's on GoPro somewhere. I was like, holy crap. I mean, the whole thing stunk like fish. I'm so lucky it didn't hit here.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was smart enough, because he was trying to get up. He's like computing the angles. He's like, I think I'm going to hit that son of a bitch. Better come back for the fish later. So he's like, he dropped. He likes to watch where the fish land so he can come get it later. But had he not done that, he would have hit me right in the chest or the head, and it would have been... I don't know if I would have stayed on the bike, because those things are big. And when he went away, I was like, is a gray and white osprey.
Yeah.
Pretty
in
cool.
the lean, too. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an opportunity to go off the
Wildlife, how do you predict that? How do you foresee
Right.
that? You don't
Right.
foresee that.
They're the most dangerous thing, man, I'm telling you.
Yeah, they are.
So,
Road surfaces, which you covered, that were huge. How about wet leaves, painted surfaces that are wet? Steel grading, which I see a lot in Hood River, Oregon, especially when it's wet. Low traction areas. Just do the best you can foreseeing threats and talking about it with your riding partner.
Yeah.
And by the way, I like keeping my groups small.
Yeah.
Just two. I don't ride in big groups. It's he and I. Go ahead.
And communications, that's something too that we were talking on the interphone the whole time. Now, it didn't make a huge difference in this particular incident because, like I said, he didn't even see it. But a lot of times, like when Nutton and I are riding, we can talk about
We're
hazards
talking
that are
about
coming
it
up,
all
what's
the time.
temperature. Hey, look, it's getting a little bit colder. Watch for ice.
What another motorist is doing, I was like, hey, watch this guy on the right, watch him on the left. Hey, I'm gonna shoot this gap. Are you good for it?
Yeah.
Interphones are pure safety. It's fun to talk to each other and shoot the crap, but it's mostly for safety, just like lighting.
Yep. So, yep.
There you go.
I think that's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
So lessons learned from an actual serious motorcycle incident that Sean experienced. Thanks for coming along. Glad you made it out okay. I mean, when he called me and told me what happened, I was like, man. Yeah. He goes, by the way, that cool blue FJR I have, it's done.
Yeah.
And Sean's like, I'll be able to repair it. And I was like, no, you won't.
No,
not cost effectively.
Not cost effectively.
When a motorcycle gets beyond a certain point, you're just better to junk it, part it out if you have a lot of time, eBay the parts if you want, junk it out, buy another one.
Well, apparently there are guys out there that do, like, they buy up specifically busted up bikes and they put them back together.
There's
That's
retired guys who do it. They have a lot of time.
Yeah, that's a hobby in and of itself. That's something that, you do it when you got extra time or you want a project, something like that. But I think in the way that our lives go, generally, we don't have time for stuff like that.
Yeah, because it comes a time versus cost benefit. Okay, how much time do I have to put in this? I could do something else to make more money. Not worth it.
No.
There you go. Thank you so much. Ride safe. Thanks to the donors for this video. Be a donor for the rest of your life. It's simple, nothing fancy. Patreon. $5 to $10 a month. We have a lot more motorcycle adventures to go. We have probably 5 more rides between the Wolverine and our bikes to edit, and we got more planned. Get out and ride. Just because there is risk, it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. There's risk in any adventure you take, whether you're backpacking, day hiking, walking. Just be safe. Take appropriate, appropriate measures to mitigate
your gear,
risk.
And plan it out. Think about it ahead of time. Think about what kind of hazards you're going to face. Do your best to mitigate them, and then get out there and do it. And it's well worth it, guys. Get out there and do it.
We have fun every time we ride.
Absolutely.
Every time we get back, we're just smiling. We're like, dude, thanks for coming.
Yep.
See you next video. Bye-bye.